Okay. Greetings, everybody. We'll get started at the top of the hour. Thank you for logging in so far. Looks like we have a question already. Okay, not going to look at that quite yet. Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us it's morning in Seattle. Good afternoon, good evening for folks around the world. Welcome to the All You Need to Know About Updating from BarTender version 10.1 to BarTender 2019 and beyond. My name is Carolyn McLeod, and I'm the new Channel Marketing Manager here at Seagull. And welcome to the event. But thank you very much today for your time and for your continued loyalty over the decades. I'll cover a quick couple of housekeeping items. Most importantly, please be aware that although you're muted, we are recording, so if you are not consenting your participation, just go ahead and drop at this time. Secondly, we'll be emailing you a link to the recording after the event, as well as the slides and other important materials critical to your success. So take a minute to opt in to our emails. I put a link to it, and you can find it on our webpage, but it's in the chat window to all attendees. And then we'll hold a hearty Q&A at the end of the event. So please type your questions into the questions panel along the side in your dashboard. And then now I'm going to introduce our team here. Your presenters today are Manny Castro. He's our solutions sales consultant and heads up professional services here in the Americas. Been here, what, 10 years now, Manny?
Almost
10 years.
Yeah,
Yep.
8 or so.
And then, newest to our team is Mike Leo. He is our senior product marketing manager and making a lot of really great changes here at BarTender. And Stacy and I are both in marketing, and Stacy is going to be doing webinars from now on, and I'll be doing the partner ones. She'll be doing more of the customer ones. So glad to have you aboard here on the webinar team at a very early hour in Seattle. Get used to it, Stacy. There'll be a lot. And we'll go. I'll pass the mic over to Mike now.
Great, thanks, Carolyn. Let's see. Before I get to the agenda, just quick note: if you are having problems with your audio, to take a look at the interface in the screenshot that we have up here. And what we found is if you are having issues, maybe clicking no audio to sort of reset, go to webinar, and then clicking back on computer audio. So great. Well, let's take a quick look at our agenda. I think Manny and myself, primarily Manny, will probably be speaking for roughly 30-35 minutes. First we'll be covering how 10.1 customers can update their software. And then next, Manny will be discussing what's new and what's changed between BarTender 10.1 and our latest version, BarTender 2019. We'll end our presentation with some best practices and tips for preparing and performing the update from BarTender 10.1 to BarTender 2019. And finally, we'll definitely save some time and room to answer as many questions as we can at the end of our presentation. So in terms of updating from BarTender 10.1, it's pretty straightforward. If you are a current customer and you're up to date and current on your standard maintenance and support, you can actually go to the customer portal and download the latest BarTender 2019 software on the customer portal, as well as on our support section of our website, seagullscientific.com. There's also extensive help and documentation available there in the customer portal and the support pages. If you do need to renew your maintenance and support, you can definitely contact us. We'll have contact information there, as well as at the end of the presentation, or you can contact your local partner reseller. In the partner portal itself, you can also get, in addition to being able to download BarTender 2019, you can also get an estimate and a quote directly through the customer portal if you wanted sort of some budgetary pricing. I would say that note right now, we also have what we're calling our business stability and customer loyalty promotion going on right now, where if you do purchase 1, 2, or 3 or more years of maintenance and support, we'll be waiving back pay penalties and payments and offering some discounts on our standard maintenance and support. And also, of course, by renewing your maintenance and support, you'll gain access to the latest BarTender 2019 software, along with access to our legendary technical support team, no matter which region around the world you are located. Note that in addition to being able to update the BarTender 2019, which we'll be talking about, you'll also be able to update to the next major BarTender 2021 release available later this year, which if you've been sort of keeping track of our Preview 1 and our upcoming Preview 2 releases, there's a lot of exciting new features and capabilities in BarTender 2021. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Manny, who will go through what's new in BarTender 2019 that's currently available and why you should update.
Thanks, Michael. So since BarTender 10.1, we've made some significant improvements to our software. We've added features that solve real-world problems for our customers. We simplified our software additions, so you're going to see a little bit of a change on that. We've created, like Michael said, an online support center containing articles and videos that help you create labels, documents, designs, and use all the features that may already be part of your edition to their full potential. In other words, regardless of whether you'll use BarTender or your use of BarTender consists of creating templates, designs, configuring automated print solution, or managing print operations across multiple sites, we have a lot of exciting improvements to share with you today.
Hey, Manny, when did 10.1 release? How many years has it been? We've had a lot of changes since then, huh?
Yeah, I would say it was roughly 8 years ago because 10.1 was one of the first versions that I started working with myself when I joined the company. Yeah, so I started supporting 10.0 and then we immediately switched to 10.1.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot has changed for sure. Okay, so and these are some of the, just a summary of why to update to BarTender 2019. Like we were just saying, a lot has changed since then, and we're going to go into each one of these sections a little bit more in depth here with a few slides, and we're going to begin with the additions and some of the install items. That's usually where you begin with assessing what you need as far as BarTender is concerned, right? You need to select an addition at some point and you need some information as far as the technicalities of what's new. So the different BarTender additions should still feel familiar, but with a few slight changes. We've renamed Enterprise Automation to Enterprise. And while this looks like a small change on paper, the change is significant when we look at why we did that. The Enterprise edition of BarTender is now even more focused on document management and centralized printing. Not only did we change the name, but we moved automation features that were unique to Enterprise down to the Automation edition. Now, when you purchase the automation edition of BarTender, you will receive all the different automation options, such as the processing of BTXML. The professional edition is primarily focused on connecting label designs to external databases and selecting or inputting data at print time through custom data entry forms. Additionally, the BarTender installation process has been simplified. For example, you no longer need to worry about what edition you're installing. Things work a little bit different with the licensing part of things as well. And you really just run the installer, you plug in your activation code and go. And one big change that you'll have to consider from a technical standpoint is the option to now install 86 or 32-bit, excuse me, and 64-bit installs. So this helps with performance. It's also a broader support for things like specific and custom applications. One thing to remember is as older versions and patches of Windows become unsupported, BarTender 2019 will continue to be compatible on recent supported versions and updates of Windows. So that's kind of one of the big things that you have to consider as far as when you're thinking why it's important to upgrade from BarTender 10.1 or even prior, really. You're in BarTender version 10.1, you're only compatible with Windows 10 up to version 1803. And that was released roughly in July of 2018. And on the server side, the Windows Server side, it's going to be up to Windows Server 2019. So at some point, you're going to, not because of your BarTender version specific, but just, everything around that, like the outdated operating systems, you're going to end up exposing yourself and your company, right, and your customers to big security exploits potentially. So, and then also, yeah, one more big thing here. Rather than supporting multiple licensing models, those familiar with the editioning in BarTender 10.1 and prior, it was very, that big changeover, I should say, from like a professional to an automation was how the licensing was handled. And now instead of having to worry about how that all works, it's been simplified. And we just now license all BarTender editions by the number of printers that you used, and that's really it.
Yeah, so any number of users then. That's so nice. That's a really good change.
Right, yeah, and I guess like what I see is, oftentimes it's not everybody that needs the full 100% use of the software. And what I mean by that is you might have some other parties or some other departments that are going to be making slight changes to your labels, and they need it for, 5 minutes on a Tuesday. And, that's okay with this new licensing model. You just have to worry about the printer count. And then moving on, creating labels and specifically templates in BarTenders, they're really nothing new. That's been something that's been around. However, since version 10.1, we've introduced quite a few new features, and some of them we'll cover in this slide, and some of them we'll cover in a moment. And when you kind of put all those things together, it kind of gives you what we call intelligent templates. So now what companies can do is they can create these intelligent templates to produce a wide variety of flexible label and document designs without having to create and maintain hundreds of separate documents. So one of the big things that we do from like a pro services standpoint is when it's very easy for customers to kind of get into these tendencies where they start creating a lot of labels where you can have something conditionally print based on a database field or based on where something that used to actually require a script or VB scripting. And this is just some examples how I personally describe it, like I just mentioned, how you can implement a lot of these behaviors without requiring that VB script and then learning how to use VB script just saves money, saves time, etc.
All good things.
Now, on the database connection side of things, since BarTender 10.1 was released, we've added a lot of new database connection options. And some of this is just support for new database platforms that weren't supported before. Some of those being Azure SQL databases. XML files can actually be looked at or depicted as a record set now. MySQL, and there's actually a pretty long list. And it keeps improving, to be honest. So we also now can do a native connection to Excel and Access files. So a lot of our customers ran into this issue where we had that dependency on that Microsoft driver, that Microsoft Excel driver. And that was something that you had to consider when you were deploying BarTender around multiple locations, especially when you had a lot of users doing a lot of different things that became a little bit clunky. And now it's just you install BarTender, it just works, it connects to database, no errors and things like that. Also, you can create a database from scratch using tools within BarTender itself now. So you could create, and there's a couple of different ways of how this works here. So you could create a database file, and you could, let's say you don't have Excel, you can now use a tool called Data Builder, and that's going to be your new Excel replacement. Now, another way or something else that you can do with those Data Builder files is you can embed them, within the BarTender document itself. So oftentimes what would happen is as labels move around, they would lose their connectivity. So for example, I would say my Excel file's on Manny's desktop, and then I send it to Carolyn, and she opens it, and it gives her an error, and she's not sure how to react to it, and a waste of time, right? So now you can, if the situation works for that, and what I mean by is if you want to do that, you can go ahead and you can embed your database within the label itself. And that's kind of not really an issue anymore. And like I said, it mostly helps when you're sharing or collaborating with multiple users. Also, in BarTender 10.1, printing multiple records within a single label or document was kind of a complicated process, but now in BarTender 2019, we have the capability to do so using table objects sourced from a database. This capability now allows you to more easily create documents like invoices and packing slips and purchase order type labels. And those are usually not technically impossible, but it was a really complicated way to do it, and it's just much easier now, especially for like I said, like that packing slip style label. And then finally, this one's pretty big, and something else that we're going to talk about in a moment because it's a part of a bigger topic. We now have the capability to write back to most SQL or relational database platforms. And of course, the use case for that it varies, very widely why that's needed. But one common request has always been to generate a serial number using BarTender and capture that value. And you just need it in a certain place. And for whatever reason, your ERP system or traceability, etc. And in BarTender 2019, this process is it's pretty simple and it doesn't require any scripting. Whereas before, you would have to do something like write a pretty extensive and very delicate script that was very relational to like your location and on the network and things like that. Now it's much simpler. It's a built-in feature. There's a wizard, and it's as easy as as connecting to a database in which you might be familiar with. And something else. So now in BarTender 2019, you can create PDFs, or I shouldn't say create. I should say we can print to PDFs without a third-party driver. Now in BarTender version 10.1 and prior, you could export a view of what you see in your label design, but you couldn't without a third-party driver. Say file print, and I want to print all my records from my database to a PDF. That's just what I need for my scenario. And so now it's just, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to configure anything. It's part of the BarTender install itself. You hit file print, select PDF, it's just there. And just going back to, I always try to apply my, kind of like my personal use cases, or not my personal, my work use cases, my personal work use cases.
You got your garage barcoded, Manny?
Yeah, right.
Your man cave?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. What I was gonna say was what we use it for, what's kind of just it made life just way easier for us, made life way easier for our customers was when we're building integrations, you need to print to PDF, and it was always difficult because third-party PDF drivers don't really like to be used as a service, and they're really finicky, and it's kind of like your mileage may vary, and it depended a little bit upon your technical ability to, or your patience, to be frank, on figuring that out. And now as you just select, you want a PDF, tell us where you want to put it, where you would like us to save it, and it kind of works. And it's even via the integration platform, like I said. And then it supports your standard security and encryptions as well. And then we move into the data entry forms. So we've made designing data entry forms in BarTender easier, and there's just more options available to you. So we've introduced new ways to select database records at print time. So that's a very common thing or use case for BarTender. And it's just now easier with something like a record picker. You can build a form that contains everything you need on it, such as the printer, and you can select the printer, the record, enter variable data, select the number of serial numbers you want, and it's just all in one form if that's what you'd like. And that's kind of really just the start, as we're going to go into the next slide, and we're going to talk about actions in BarTender 2019. So this relates back to what I was talking about, writing back to databases. So in the latest version of BarTender, we've added the ability to create document and form actions. And with this, what you're able to do is you're able to do things like write back to a database, send an email. So for example, if you want an optional button to print a secondary label, you are able to do that. If you want to notify your IT department that you're running low on label stock or something, or a link to your help desk, your own IT help desk is just a simple link, right? You can do that, and you can do that with actions. And I do say, so hang on to that term actions, because it's kind of, it spreads across the BarTender suite in BarTender 2019. And it's a really wild card and really powerful, a really powerful thing. And then we move into, this is a big one. So our new integration platform, and I say new, so that's new as in BarTender 2016, and it's only gotten better and more flexible, more actions and things like that in 2019. But prior, this is going to be the equivalent to Commander. So if you use Commander, and what I mean by that is you have maybe your ERP system, you have a dashboard, you have an application of some sort that you've created, and you maybe drop a trigger file. That's the technical term that we use, I guess. So you drop a file and we pick it up and we process it. So that behavior, or that integration, as we call it, is now replaced by the integration builder, integration platform. So, and if you are already using Commander, don't worry, those files, and I've seen some pretty complex and extensive Commander task lists. Those are backwards compatible in the sense that you can import them into the new version of BarTender. And then usually what we do with our customers, that we help with integrations is they often did things a certain way because maybe of a limitation or a feature that didn't exist in BarTender, or maybe just lack of knowledge by whoever set it up. But they end up having these unnecessarily complex integrations, and they're very sensitive to and very manual to maintain. I should say it's the maintenance of them is more important. But now with the integration platform, it's much easier. Your old integrations work. Meantime, you learn how to use the tool. And then whenever you're ready to simplify it and make it better and take advantage of all the new features, they're kind of just there for you. Also, there's this concept now that the integration builder is going to be where you build and you test your integrations, and then you deploy them to what we call the admin console. And we'll see a slide about that next. And also a few other things that are kind of nuances that were just a thing of BarTender 10.1 and before. You can now schedule integrations, so you can test your integration all week long. You're not ready for go live yet, you can schedule it for Monday or whenever you need to. And then also you're able to run as many integrations as you'd like. So there's not that concept anymore of a single command or task list. You just deploy all the ones that you want and however you want to organize them. And it's just a much more powerful and also easy to use tool. And then we move into a little bit more on the admin side of things. And this is going to be where the administration console comes in. So this kind of takes the role of quite a few familiar companion applications in BarTender 10.1 and prior. But I guess where we can start is Security Center. So that was the primary tool in BarTender 10.1 for managing user security. And now the admin console has taken over that role. The admin console is also the primary tool for managing BarTender for really like all business sizes. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter how big your license is, how complex your security setup is, how many integrations you have running. It just kind of adapts to how little or how much you need. Some of the big things in this kind of it's all tied together in some way. If we talk about licensing, because that does live in the admin console now, there's now new ways to manage printers across your network. And what I mean by that is you can completely deny a printer, or you can select certain ones that you want to allow to take one of those printer seats. You can also control printer redirection from here. So if your printer is offline or in error state, you can automatically redirect that print job to another available printer. Our new licensing tool also has the capability to handle printer licenses as far as printer pools, excuse me. So you can license printers for a certain group or allocate certain printers for certain user or a certain Windows users or specific Windows user. And in general, like I mentioned, there's new tools for deploying the BarTender integrations. So you have the flexibility to deploy the integration when you and your company are ready to do so. And we still have all the user management settings that were available in 10.1. So one of the big things when customers are updating is, they're going to lose a certain functionality, and that's kind of a scary thought to think about, especially if it's business critical or has some level of importance, right? So everything exists, and it's just in a much more centralized solution. So regardless if you don't see Security Center or you don't see the specific Siegel license server icon anymore, if you open up your admin console, you'll be able to see all that here. And then moving on to, did I miss anything? Oh, yes, one big thing that's kind of like a new concept to get your head wrapped around. There's this concept now that we have dynamic PKCs. So what I mean by that is in the past, when you would update or change anything to your BarTender license, you do an upgrade in printer count, you do a change in additioning, etc. You were forced to forfeit your old BarTender product key code. You would receive a new BarTender product key code and you would apply it. And that all is kind of a little bit clunky, right? So now instead of having to go through all that, instead what you can do is you can just let us know, let your reseller or let your partner know, hey, I'm ready to go from 10 printers to 50. It happens in the background. You don't have to do anything as far as the admin console is concerned. Once that's finalized, so to speak, it just automatically happens, and you can go to your admin console and you can see, hey, I have all my extra printers available to me there. And then we can talk about in BarTender 2019, Print Portal has been replaced with Web Print Server. Excuse me, Print Portal, opposite. Print Portal has replaced Web Print Server. So that, if you're not familiar with that, that's BarTender's web-based label printing solution. And Print Portal has given web print servers, or excuse me, Print Portal has given you kind of like a new or a big update to as far as what you can do and how you can interact with it. And it's now, and one of those examples is you're now able to install the Print Portal app, and on an Android or iOS device, there's new options for folder management. So you're actually able to, for example, say, hey, I only want, receiving to see certain folders, and another department can see their own folders or their own directories, and they can print from this web interface. And you can set those security profiles on the web page itself.
And
And with
people can be outside your organization too, right? You just need to supply them with user credentials.
Yep. Yeah. So what we do on that scenario is, we do have to expose the server, give it a external facing IP address or in a DNS name and all that that can be resolved for on the internet, not just on our local network. And I guess technically you don't have to, but anytime we do a project like that, we strongly encourage to not leave it open. For example, Siegel Scientific has, and I don't have the link available off the top of my head right now, but we have a print portal that's public facing that you can actually use to test. And a lot of our sales team, like the RSM sales engineers, they use that for demos. And when they hang up on the call, they leave the customer or potential customer with that link and say, here, go ahead and, drive it around, see what it looks like, so to speak.
It's nice if a label gets damaged somewhere along the way, people can reprint it. If something needs to change, rather than sending it all the merchandise back, you can fix it on the spot. Saves lots of time, lots of money in your ecosystem.
Absolutely. Okay, and with that, I believe Michael has a few words to say, kind of wrapping up that section. And Michael, I'll hand it over to you for a bit.
Great. Thanks, Manny, for that great overview on all the exciting new capabilities. What you were talking about in terms of the print portal, actually, in our BarTender 2021 in addition, so it's greatly expanded in BarTender 2019, but it's actually also an area where we're doing even more improvements for BarTender 2021. So if you are interested in checking out sort of a new streamlined interface for Print Portal, make sure to try out our preview one. But again, thank you, Manny, for highlighting all the great new capabilities in the currently available BarTender 2019. Sounds like there's a lot of flexibility in terms of integrating your labeling system today with any databases or any business systems that you currently have. Also, in addition to be able to design great labels or intelligent templates capabilities, you can also, BarTender 2019 provides a lot of different ways you can automate and actually manage your overall labeling system much easier. So Manny, once you've decided to update to BarTender 2019, given all these great new capabilities and features, can you sort of take us through some tips and best practices for sort of the actual update process?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like Michael said, so let's go ahead and review. So what are our best practices for updating BarTender? So let's say that you're coming from BarTender 10.1 or prior. You might be in a validated environment. You might be working with, a system or a process that's very heavily tested and regulated, or something to that degree, or it's just business critical, so that can't go down. So this is the best practice that we suggest, and usually in almost all scenarios, what we follow with our the customers that we help out in doing this. So before updating, you'll need to build a plan, so to speak. And remember, it's always a good idea to set up a test PC, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But just like any printing process, or especially when we're talking about integrations and things like that, there's a lot of moving parts. Some things within BarTender, some things outside of BarTender, but like I said, especially with integrations. Regardless of the designated PC, right? If you decide to go with that test server or not, I strongly suggest it just for anything that's integrated or anything like that. Like I said, it's just it works out better in the end. You'll want to get the latest BarTender installer. I would suggest checking the website at the time that you're ready to start this process. And the reason for that is when we patch the software, you want to make sure that you get you're on the latest patch. It's going to be what works best for you. And you're going to need your new BarTender product key code that, remember, now is dynamic, and it kind of just grows and moves around as your business does as well. And then lastly, just from a technical standpoint, it's of course, right? But just to say it, you'll definitely need admin access to the PC. You'll be doing a lot of driver installs, potentially, configurations outside of BarTender to other systems integrating with BarTender. And this might require help from your IT department, or the system that you're integrating with might require some help from that team. And once we kind of have that plan down, we can move on to our next step, which is going to be, we want to back up our files, and we want to go back to our original production PC and just start assessing, what's going on, what files are being used. And each one is a little bit different. So, each BarTender deployment, I'll warn. So in our BarTender projects, sometimes I'm asked, can you just export a specific file, or is it a one click and move it over? But however, a lot of and actually really the settings are actually going to be mostly in your BTW files and your integration files, things like your command or task lists. But there's variance to that, right? So you might have a practice of share or saving it on your C drive, or you might have a very centralized structure where you store all your files, or you might store things very differently than maybe somebody even within your own industry and things like that. Another thing to consider, which is kind of sometimes overlooked, is you might have your databases. You might have you might have BarTender labels that are being populated by databases. That might be a simple Excel file. That might be a very custom, ODBC connection, etc. But you'll want to kind of assess what that dependency is and what that dependency of that label is, and just take a look at your printing environment and start backing up all those files. And then once we have all those files, and don't forget the images if you have that dependency, then we're going to go over and we're going to look at our BarTender system database. Now, this actually only applies in BarTender 10.1 and prior to the automation and the enterprise automation, when enterprise automation was an addition, users. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to update your BarTender system database version. So you're running some old version, some old build and schema of that database. And what we want to do is we don't want to necessarily just take it away from your existing environment. There might be somebody or some system still using that. So we want to back it up. And there's a few approaches for that. You can use, something like a built-in tool, Microsoft SQL Server's built-in tools to export and import databases, or you can use BarTender's built-in backup tools in the BarTender system database wizard in your BarTender version 10.1. That would exist as its own companion application in 10.1 and prior. And like I said, we want to back up our system database if applicable for the same reasons that we want to back up our files. We want to have a point that we can return to and make sure that we have a new successful deployment. So when we go to setting up the test environment, like I said, we're going to try to get away from the scenario where you take down a tested or validated production system and then replace it with one that's not. There might be a process, there might be a timeline where something's not ready to, in most of our projects, we have dev, test, and prod. Those are pretty common terms. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with. So it's not going to be a new server that's just going to go straight to prod. And that's effectively the reason that we want to set up, or this is the kind of the suggested approach when we're migrating and updating to BarTender 2019. And so things to consider as we get started. As we mentioned, we do now offer 32 and 64-bit installers of BarTender. There's no difference in editioning or anything like that. It's just you pick whatever you need and whatever works best for you. And whatever works best for you is going to be it's going to depend on a few things. Usually, at face value, you want to just install what matches the operating system that you're installing BarTender on. But the other thing that you have to consider as well, especially because now 64-bit is pretty much the new standard. Well, it very much is, right? The new standard, especially on the server side and everything. There might be drivers or something to that effect, like a legacy database driver, or maybe a custom application that has to interact with BarTender. And a lot of those times, that entity, whatever that is, they're pretty delicate to the fact that they only work with other applications that match the architecture of themselves. So because of that, we'll want to kind of just consider once again how we're using our software. But most times, or in most cases, you're going to be okay with the matching architecture to your operating system. Of course, we'll want to meet the new BarTender system requirements. Those have likely changed since the old deployment. And lastly, the actual process itself. So we talked about setting up a test environment, and while the best practice is not the route that you may go, in any case, you still need to get BarTender installed. You still need to install your print drivers. You might want to, this is a good time usually to see, do I have any driver updates? Maybe, you've been experiencing some bugs or something in a driver that you're using, and there's a new, better version for it, or updated, I should say, version for it, or you want to use the latest SQL driver for best performance. And then also, this is a good time as well to do things like build out a new server or new PCs, upgrade operating systems. Once again, we find a lot of customers running, on operating systems that are close to or even out of support, once again, exposing you to potential security risks. And with BarTender 2019 being compatible with the latest Windows OSs and things like that, it's a good time to kind of get all those things taken care of, make the IT team and security teams happy, and just get the new features, new experience. Usually things just run better performance-wise as well. Yeah, and then otherwise, I mean, that's our best practices suggestion. And with that, I'll hand it over back to Mike.
Great. Thank you, Manny, again, for all your experience. And I think we mentioned at the beginning, Manny sort of leads our professional services team. So it's great for him to be able to share a lot of real life sort of practical information based upon his work with a lot of customers with BarTender. So again, thank you for taking us through tips and best practices. We wanted to just, a quick reminder again as to why you should update the BarTender 2019. In addition to being able to design some great labels and automate and manage your system easier. Again, with BarTender 2019, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of integrating the labeling system with your variety of different databases and other business systems. So in terms of what are the next steps to take as we sort of come to a close to our presentation today, we recommend contacting us or your local partner reseller to see how you can update to BarTender 2019. Hopefully there are some compelling new features, functionality, and capabilities that Manny was able to cover that will help your business and your labeling operation. Also, of course, note again that BarTender 2019, being released so long ago and running on older versions of Windows software that have actually are no longer supported by Microsoft. You want to make sure that you want to address any major security issues, as we're all aware of. Security for businesses of all sizes, it used to be just large enterprises, but it also runs all the way down to small businesses. Security is a major issue in terms of making sure you protect your company assets, any proprietary information that you have on your company, financials, customer information, whatever. So you want to make sure you address those. So in terms of upgrading the BarTender 2019, if you need to renew your maintenance and support, contact us or your local partner reseller. Again, if you go to our customer portal, log in, you can get an estimate or quote yourself in terms of your maintenance and support renewal there. Also, a quick reminder on the business stability and customer loyalty promotions we're running right now that will help you, again, renew your maintenance and support. And if you need extra technical assistance or help, Manny and our professional services team is also available to help you. With that note, also many of our partner resellers also have a technical staff that are available to help with this update. And finally, you can always visit the BarTender community website on seagullscientific.com or website. We have a dedicated page or section that talks about, covers what Manny went through in terms of updating from 10.1 to BarTender 2019, as well as a lot of other tips, videos, documentation, technical documentation, and along with other users in terms of their experience in terms of upgrading. So with that, I'll thank you for attending. I'll turn the presentation back over to Carolyn.
All right, we have some great questions. And just to recap real quick, our presenters today were Mike Leo, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and then Manny Castro, professional services guy. And both of them work very closely with partners and with customers. And Manny, you actually are can do like quick 2-hour sessions just to help people get started with their transition or train their team or whatever. So and then I'm Carolyn McLeod and Stacy Jim. We're in marketing, and we have also our America's sales leader, Chris Erickson, on the line that's going to chime in if we have any questions about that. I have 2 good ones to start. I'm not sure which you wants to answer, but does it cost anything for customers to upgrade to 2019? That's question number 1.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I think as I mentioned, if you are on maintenance and support, if you're current on your maintenance and support, actually upgrading or updating BarTender 2019, there is no additional cost. You can actually go right into the customer portal, log in and download the software. And as Manny described, just input your PKC, personal key code, and you can start running BarTender 2019.
Excellent. And then another big question is, what happens on after December 31st, 2020 to 10.1 users, customers?
Well, I think as Manny mentioned again, our support, our technical service support ends on December 31st. So unfortunately, similar to if you were to call in a Microsoft for technical support for the older version of Windows 10 or Windows 2016 server, the technical support team will not be able to help you. I think after December 31st, our technical support team will not be able to help you with 10.1 at that point, and which is why we're greatly encouraging our customers to take advantage of the ability to upgrade to BarTender 2019 as soon as possible.
Great. And then also for people asking questions, just to let you know, we absolutely will get to all the questions after the event. If we have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so don't worry. We have a whole team here that will follow up to make sure that you get your questions answered. I'm going to go through some of the other ones now. And this one is, how can we use custom generated QR codes in BarTender templates?
Well, so for QR codes, each barcode structure and what you need is going to be a little different and it varies. But for QR codes, what you usually want to do is you want to find out by usually whoever's requesting this barcode of you, what the structure needs to be. It's going to likely have a header, it might have delimiters, and it's going to have a footer, and we usually call those an envelope. And what you need to do is you need to find out, is that necessary or not, or do you just need a serial number in there, and what data do you need, and plug it in the designer itself in the properties.
Okay. And then this question is, how long the max number of printers used in a week, and how long does it take to forget?
Yeah, so that's a good question, especially with the licensing changes. So that's going to be the same as you expect it to be as far as in BarTender version 10.1 and prior. So whenever you use a printer, that's when it counts as a licensed printer, and it will fall off after 7 days of inactivity. The grace periods that kept you safe in printing during catastrophic hardware events or whatever, they still apply. So that is still a familiar, or that should still be a familiar concept.
Okay, great. And then somebody had problems with 2016 files when they installed 2019. Has that been fixed?
Well, first I would say, I would contact our support and we would want to look at that. But what I will say from my experience, that 99% of the time, the big deal or the big reason for something like that to occur, like a label opens in one version this way and it looks different over here, has to do with the print driver that you have selected. So one thing to remember about BarTender is we're really, from a technical standpoint, right, we're really dependent upon the driver that you select. So the driver that you select when you design your label is going to be like what we inherit, resolutions, supported fonts, and pages and things like that. So in my experience, the main thing is your print drivers. You want to make sure that you have similar print drivers, and it could be the new version of that driver. That's completely fine. But you don't want to go from something like a Zebra to your OfficeJet printer, because then you'll see it not what you expect. And that's, like I said, and then if that's not the case, we definitely want to know about that and look into it. Reach out to our tech support team, or maybe we can even flag your ticket, and yeah, just let us know.
Yeah, and I would say with regards to print drivers, if you check out our blog on seagullscientific.com, we have issued, since 10.1, we've issued a number of new printer drivers as well as improved printer drivers over the years. So every time we do sort of a printer driver update, there's a blog post that is sort of a permanent record in terms of all the, literally hundreds of different printers that we've updated and have provided new drivers for. So I would encourage you to take a look there if you want to check that before you sort of contact our technical support.
Okay. Question, do we have any standard templates to interface with Microsoft Dynamics? Looks like D35, but I think they meant 365. And then do you have any standard SSCC compliance label templates for customers?
If you're just looking just for a sample template, I'd like to take that question offline because I
Okay.
wouldn't want to give you a bad answer. We just have so many sample templates and we're always adding to them. I can't recall, but I think at least on the latter, on the SSCC ones, we do have a template. And the first, the Microsoft Dynamics, like you said, it's probably 365. I can take that one offline.
Okay, thanks, Manny. We talked about drivers already, so I'm going to pass by that one. Got those. Sorry, that one's a long one. We'll follow up with you. We already talked about the deadline after December 31st, so that one's covered. Actually, let me do it again because I bet people are thinking about it. Previously, 2019, there was a promotion that you had 90 days to complete the upgrade once you start. Is that still the case?
I believe that's in reference to, if I understand the context of the question, that's in reference to what we call our provisional activation period. And yes, that's definitely still the case. We use it all the time. Since it's a good question, for those of you not familiar with that, the way that it works is when you have, let's say, a BarTender version 10.1 and it's on maintenance, and like we talked about, the best practice approach is to set up a test environment, validate it, then move it to production. So what we do is we give you a provisional activation where even though you only have one version 10.1 PKC on maintenance, that's the big thing, you can still install and put up a BarTender 2019 server, do your testing without having to acquire the multiple licenses just for testing for them,
Okay.
unless you need that.
All right, that makes sense. Are there improvements to the rendering engine being made to improve the speed of label generation using .NET SDKs? There's often a long delay between firing the print command and the actual label being sent to a printer.
Yeah, there's been a ton of performance improvements, just a lot of little things in the back that make just the general printing process better, especially when integrating, especially when using the SDK. One thing I will say on that is to keep in mind that it might be something else causing the delay. It might be something like we're waiting for a query to come back, and there might be a little bit different approach or design for that integration that might alleviate that issue. But yes, there has been a ton of changes in the background that help performance.
Here's an interesting one. I haven't seen this product for a while. 10.1 labels linked to Excel 97. Manny, were you born yet in 97?
I was young, but yeah.
It's okay, good solid product. 10.1 labels linked to Excel 97, printing through Commander, trigger joined with test file. Will they need to be tweaked with Designer before executing through Integrator?
Nope. No, that should work fine. You would just take the files, folders, I should say more specifically, take the folders, move them to your new BarTender 2019 PC, import your task list, your Commander task list integration, deploy the integration, and yeah, that's totally supported and it should work fine.
Okay, and even 10.1 under maintenance agreements will not be supported after 12/31. True or false?
That's correct.
Okay. Alrighty, and I think this will be our last question regarding RFID encoding. 10.1 EPC data is treated as a text field. In 2019, the EPC number is treated as a numeric field. We use leading zeros in our EPCs, and they no longer encode correctly in 2019. How do we mitigate that?
On that one, I would bring that one to our tech support team. I think you might just have a different data type selected. Because one thing to remember about RFID encoding is at the end of the day, in the background, it's going to get converted to hex. So the support for the types of characters or anything like that hasn't changed. So whatever worked in the old version should work in the new one. And I think it's just a drop-down list inside the properties of the RFID that you're missing, specifically under the data type tab.
Okay, excellent. Well, this has been great, guys. Good to see you. A nice visual video here for the first time at Siegel Scientific webinars. This year has changed us. And again, all the questions, thank you so much. We will be following up with you afterwards. And I think we're ready to sign off.
Great. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone. Cheers.
Okay, bye, guys.
Stay safe out there.